I'm doing the 10 album challenge. What's a 10 album challenge, you ask? Good question. Essentially, Mrs. Northern Revolutions is going to come down here. She's going to pick through 10 records that she wants me to talk about. What did she pick? Stay tuned. Hey everybody, welcome to Northern Revolutions. I'm Rob. Welcome back if you're returning. Welcome if you're new. As I mentioned off the top, I'm doing the 10 album challenge. For those that don't know, this originated with Frank Landry over at Channel 33 RPM. I'll leave a link to Frank's channel and this video in particular. And what Frank did is he had his wife come and just pick 10 records from his collection that she wanted him to talk about. And if he hadn't listened to them in a year, he had to listen to them and report back. So we're going to do the same thing. Mrs. Northern Revolutions is going to pick 10 records. Although Mrs. Northern Revolutions is a little camera shy. I promise you she exists and she watches all my videos, but she does not want to appear on camera. So she's going to pick the records off camera. Then I'm going to talk about them. And if I haven't listened to them, I will go back and listen to them. So be right back. Okay, we're back. My wife has picked her 10 records that she wants me to talk about.
Hey, baby.
Susie, I keep telling you, you're not the real Mrs. Northern Revolutions. I'm sorry.
Aw, but Rob, I love you.
Susanna Hoffs, everybody. Okay, so without further ado, here's the 10 records my wife picked. Okay, so the first one is the self-titled debut and only release by the Highwomen. This came out in 2019. The Highwomen supergroup, I guess, Brandi Carlile, Maren Morris, Natalie Hemby, and Amanda Shires. I mean, it kind of plays homage to the Highwaymen from back in the 80s, I guess, sort of the female version. It was actually Amanda Shires' idea, and she convinced Brandi Carlile to join, and the others came along as well. It's them doing, female country music. I'm not a country music fan, but I saw them. I'd never heard of them before. I saw them on YouTube on Stern. He had them in the studio, and they did a wonderful cover of Fleetwood Mac's The Chain. I think they did it for a film soundtrack. I thought, wow, these women are incredible. Amanda Shires is married to Jason Isbell, so I guess it's him and Brandi Carlile's band backs these guys, these girls, I should say, pardon me. And I bought the album. The big single off here was Redesigning Women. Great video, great song. I bought this and listened to it relentlessly when I bought it a couple years ago. And I have listened to it recently, as recently as probably a month or two ago. I spun this. So I don't have a lot of country albums, but this one's quite enjoyable. Fantastic harmonies, these women. I actually hope they come together and put out another record. Would be fantastic. All right, the next record my wife picked is a band I've talked about before, and it's a band her and I have both seen together many times. Cuff the Duke, Toronto country rock band. This was their album called Sidelines of the City from 2007. These guys put out about, I think, 5 or 6 studio albums, and they've kind of been on indefinite hiatus since about, I don't know, probably 2014. They get together, maybe once a year, play a show. They're all busy with their other careers. I love these guys. They are really, really good. I think the first time I ever saw them, they opened for Blue Rodeo in Kitchener. My wife and I were at that show. From the first song, I'm like, these guys are great. There's just something a little bit different about them. Don't know what it is. Wayne Petty, who's the lead singer, has a very interesting singing voice. It's unique. It's very good. It's very unique. Yeah, so this was released on Hardwood Records, which was Hayden's record label. Hayden is another Canadian singer-songwriter. Of all the Cuff the Duke albums, they are all available on vinyl. This one is virtually impossible to find because when this came out, there was very, very, very few pressed on vinyl. So it took me quite a while to actually track this one down. The third one, the Mrs. Northern Revolution's picked, it's a 90s classic, Soul Asylum, Grave Dancers Union. This is one of those albums I remember vividly from the 90s when I was a teenager. This came out in 1992, and I think the song that really got me into these guys, I think, was probably Runaway Train. I remember their other album, which had Misery on it, I think, was the other big one that I remember, but loved these guys back in the 90s. This particular pressing is a 2 LP Vinyl Me Please exclusive. It has a second disc of live material and I guess some unreleased tracks. I got this as part of, like a year ago now, I won Concert Buddies contest, and the gift was a 3-month Vinyl Me Please membership. This was one of the picks that I chose because this is just of a handful of 90s albums that really take me back to being a teenager, like Oasis, What's the Story, Morning Glory, Blur's Park Life, Smashing Pumpkins, Melancholy, Infinite Sadness. This is right up there. That just, it's almost like a time machine. This is actually a very cool black and green sort of splatter vinyl. You can see there. The fourth record that my wife has picked for me to talk about is this one here, the Georgia Satellites. I picked this up at an antique market probably less than 6 months ago. It's one of those things that, you know, I was leafing through the records at a stall at one of these, you know, vendors within the antique market, and you sort through a lot of crap. There's a lot of garbage till you find something. And I saw this and I'm like, I had forgot all about these guys. I remember the big hit was Keep Your Hands to Yourself. And I think that's probably the only song by these guys that I remembered. But, I mean, this doesn't even have ringware. It's in great shape. I think it was like $2. I'm like, hell yeah. For $2, I'm going to buy this just to have that song. And obviously listen to the rest of the record. And it's just as good as that song, to be quite honest. I like this thing start to finish. Okay, my wife has picked another country record. I said I don't own a lot of country records, and I don't. But I think that she purposely picked some country records to illustrate that, yes, in fact, I do own some country. This is the band Perry, their self-titled debut from 2010. What do I say about this? I remember my wife loved this band when they first came out. And she goes, you gotta listen to it. I'm like, country, not really interested. And she played me the song, If I Die Young, which I think was the big hit single off of here. And I thought to myself, wow, that's a damn good song. And it doesn't help that Kimberly Perry is not exactly hard on the eyes. She's also a hell of a singer. And at the time, she was married to J.P. Arancibia, who was the catcher for my beloved Toronto Blue Jays. So, you know, I listened to the album a couple times and actually liked it to the point that I bought it. And it's a great sort of pop country record. Nothing deeply sophisticated about it, but very enjoyable record. I have actually listened to it in the last year, but it's something maybe I'm going to listen to it again because it is a good record. It's a shame that these guys went really nowhere. The follow-up to this was Pioneer. I have an autographed copy of that on CD. But then I think they kind of went away for a while and they came back and they tried to go pop and it was just kind of a failure. So unfortunately, these guys have pissed away to nothing, unfortunately. All right. This takes me back to being a kid. Dion and the Belmonts. Everything you always wanted to hear by Dion and the Belmonts. There's a lot of songs in there. There's 20 songs. There's all their hits and a bunch of others. why do I have this? When I was a kid, I've mentioned before, my dad was a big music guy, and so my mom listened to whatever dad was playing a lot. And I remember that they had a CD, and in fact, I may have it over here. I'm not sure. I do have it. I obviously, after my dad passed away, I took some CDs as well. This was the CD, Legends. Dion DiMucci and Del Shannon. It's a Laurie Records CD. It was a compilation. Parents had this, and it got played a lot at my house. And I loved it. I don't think it's available on vinyl. So, I have a Del Shannon record and I have a Dion record. And between those two records, I have basically everything that was on that compilation. The great songs. I mean, Run Around Sue, The Wanderer, Little Diane, Lovers Who Wander. Great stuff. Loved it. And it so brings me back to my teenage years and even my pre-teenage years when that CD would be played thousands of times. So it makes me think of my mom and dad and, happier times. Okay, next up is Me First and the Gimme Gimmes. This is called Rake It In, their greatest hits. Me First and the Gimme Gimmes are fun. They are punk band, I guess. But what they do is they do sort of punk versions of, top 40 hits. So, this being their greatest hits, there's stuff like All My Lovin', Sloop John B., Jolene, Uptown Girl, Desperado, I Believe I Can Fly. It was on and on. I don't remember the first time I heard the Me First and the Gimme Gimmes, but I remember the first album of theirs I bought was a CD called Me First and the Gimme Gimmes Have a Ball. They got they're bowling on the cover. And I still have it on CD. I don't have it on vinyl. It is available. I could buy it offline and pay a fortune in shipping. I'm just waiting until I stumble across it at some point in time. I liked everything that they did. I just thought it was fun. Is it great music? No. Nothing sophisticated about it. It's just fun. So, while I don't have a Ball, but I do have this, and they have a couple others on vinyl that I have, but I'm still looking for Have a Ball. Okay, this is what I call an I Told You So record. Legend, the best of Bob Marley and the Wailers. Okay, so wife has this on vinyl, wife has this on CD, wife plays this all the time, son loves this as well. And for the longest time, I would just go, oh shit, gotta listen to this again. It was always on in my wife's truck. My son loved it, and he'd always sing Three Little Birds. And I was just like, oh, I don't want to listen to this. And I think they just wore me down. That one day, begrudgingly, I was just like, this is actually pretty good. And the more I listened to it, the more I liked it. Now I love it. So last fall, the first time that I met Brian from Embryonic Robot and Chris from Stylus Meets Vinyl, and we went record shopping, I saw a used copy of this at Sonic Boom in Toronto and picked it up. And don't regret it, because it's great. Am I going to own any other Bob Marley records? No. I'm not into reggae, not into Bob Marley per se, but I appreciate what this is and the hits that are on here, and just because my wife and son wore me down. So this is fun to put on every now and then. Okay. I think my wife picked this because she kind of went, what the hell is that? It's a band called the Gollywogs. My records are sorted alphabetically. A to Z, by artist. Within each artist, it's chronological, except the Beatles come first. So, it's got a fairly large spine. It kind of sticks out, and I think she kind of went, what the hell are the Gollywogs? And why are they filed under C? Wow. The reason they're filed under C is the Gollywogs are, in fact, Creedence Clearwater Revival before they changed their name to Creedence Clearwater Revival. The backstory is originally they were Tom Fogerty and the somethings, and they released 2 singles and did nothing. Changed their name to the Gollywogs, released a fair amount of stuff, to be quite honest. They had one regional hit with Brown Eyed Girl, which is not the same as Van Morrison's Brown Eyed Girl. It's a Fogerty original, and that did nothing. And Fantasy, their label, offered them one more deal, but they wanted them to change their name, and they did, and they came up with Creedence Clearwater Revival, and were an instant hit once they became Creedence. It's the same four members: John, Tom, Doug, and Stu. It's interesting because it sounds like Creedence, but it also sounds nothing like Creedence. There are songs where John's voice is unmistakable, but it lacks those guitar hooks. When I think of Creedence, you think of all those guitar hooks, like the beginning of Fortunate Son, or the three chords at the beginning of Bad Moon Rising. Was it the D-A-G? Like that, you hear that, you instantly know what it is. This doesn't have that. But this also sounds a little more like 60s music as opposed to 70s rock. So it's got that very 60s guitar tone to it. So it's good, but it's not Creedence good. But I guess as the story goes, originally Tom Fogerty was doing a lot of the songwriting, and as they progressed through the Gollywog releases, John increasingly became the principal songwriter, and thus CCR was born. So I haven't listened to this in a while, so I'll give it a spin. And the last one that my wife has picked is a Canadian classic. Some might think one-hit wonder, but it's not actually. I've talked about this before. This is Alana Miles, self-titled debut from 1989. This is a promo copy. Everyone probably knows the song Black Velvet. It was a huge hit here. It was a huge hit in the US. But in Canada, she had a couple other hits on here as well. Love Is, Lover of Mine, Kickstart My Heart. I think those were the ones that achieved some success on the heels of Black Velvet. This is a really good album. If you know what Black Velvet sounds like, the rest of the album is kind of like that. She never reached this level of success ever again. Now, her follow-up album to this, I can't remember what it's called. I'll put a note here when I think of it. Did actually get nominated for a Grammy in the US, but it's not as good as this record. And unfortunately, she's kind of clung to the fame of Black Velvet ever since. Her career went nowhere. Yeah. But for what this is as a late 80s rock record, fantastic. And who can argue with Black Velvet? What an incredible song. There you go, Frank. Those are 10 records that Mrs. Northern Revolution's picked for the 10 album challenge. I have listened to all of them recently, except for the Gollywogs, which I will go and listen to now. Maybe I'll follow it up with a short later on to give my thoughts about what it sounded like. But those are 10 records pulled by my wife. I will leave a link to Frank over at channel 33 RPM. Please go check out his original Thread video. Frank has maybe the best channel in the vinyl community. It is top-notch. Hats off to you, sir. Check it out. That's everything for me today, everybody. Thanks for watching. Catch you on the flip side.